Next up, we have Claire Connolly, and Claire's paper topic is From Diet to Eating Disorder, the argument for ditching the diet and the body mass index. Let's welcome Claire.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to see you. I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully, I have a little more luck than Tanner. And thank you, Tanner, for your presentation as well. Okay. Let's see. All right, can y'all see it? Just a thumbs up. Great, awesome, and you can hear me okay? Great. All right, so I feel like it's important to start this conversation with my own location. What I mean by that is, you know, I'm coming from the lens of I'm white, middle class, I'm from Denver, Colorado, I'm queer, I identify as femme, able-bodied, cisgender. When I use the collective we, when I use the word we do this or we as a society do this, I'm referring to westernized culture or the United States in particular, and hopefully I'll do this well, I'm referring to Naropa, the Naropa community more acutely. And I just wanted to name that before I move forward, because to give the cultural context of where I'm coming from with this presentation. And Marina did such a lovely job discussing embodiment earlier today. I'm in the somatic psychology program and really looked into like how the body can heal. But what I found over the last year and a half is that I became particularly drawn to the politics of the body versus kind of like the inner world we're going through. So I kind of came at this outer lens of what does it look like when we walk into a room with our particular body size? And what presumptions are being made about my body based on what size it is, like what presumptions about my health or what presumptions about my ability or even my intellect or sadly my worth. What's being communicated simply by inhabiting the size of body that I am? And that question led me down a road that I'm going to share with you today that led to this thesis. And it also led me to some pretty dark stuff on how the politics of the body, it's rooted deeply in white supremacy and ultimately capitalism. But I'll put on the brakes here because a year and a half ago, if you had thrown out like white supremacy and capitalism, you know, diets, body image, I would have been like, okay, slow down, hippie, like give me a minute here, show me where you're going with this. And so that's where I want to take you today, is how did I get to this place where I'm exploring bodies and body size, and I realize this grander scale, this grander issue. So first things first is I need to define a few things for you. So the title, From Diet to Eating Disorder, Ditching the Body Mass Index and the Diet. So I want to define the body mass index for you in case, you know, you're not quite sure what that is. So basically, when we go to the doctor in the United States, doctors will take our height and weight, they'll divide it up, and then they'll plug that number into this chart here that you see. And you'll notice that that will give us a scale of anywhere from underweight, overweight, obese, extreme obesity. And I'm sure we've all heard these terms. And from there, doctors do diagnostics or prescriptive things. So for example, you end up in that obesity class there, then your doctor is going to be like, okay, start a diet, start exercising, it's good for your heart health, right? And this is pretty common. I go to Kaiser Permanente, and every single visit, they take my BMI and they record it on my stuff. So that's what I mean by the body mass index. That's what that is. And then I feel like it's important to define eating disorders or disordered eating. I use them interchangeably, and a lot of people do. So disordered eating, eating disorders, the National Eating Disorder Association defines it as this: restricting calories, exercising, food rules, and then notice these psychological elements here: shame upon breaking a food rule, negative thought patterns around food. So that could be things like, I ate chocolate cake for lunch, therefore for dinner, I'm not allowed any carbohydrates, even if I want them, even if my body says, yes, I need a carbohydrate, right? So this is National Eating Disorder Association. There are many classes, right? You've probably heard of anorexia, bulimia, but in general, this is disordered eating. This is an eating disorder. So if I have you all take away anything, it's this thread that I'm about to show you, this thread of my research. I'm literally going to take you step by step into how and when I discovered certain things. So the next 4 to 5 slides is going to be basically uncovering my own discovery of the bits and moving parts that led me to what I said earlier. So if you get anything, I hope it's these 5 slides. So doctors prescribe diet and exercise to people as a prescriptive tool based on that index, that chart that I showed you earlier. Pretty standard. I feel like a lot of us, if we were born and raised here, this is something, or in a Western society, this is something that the medical establishment is doing. Again, your BMI is obese, you gotta diet, you gotta exercise to feel better, to be healthy. However, the first thing I started researching was diets, especially since I was looking at the definition of eating disorder and I was like, that sounds like a diet. So I started looking into, how effective are diets? And I found that they conclusively don't work, period. Not keto, not hunger fullness, diets don't work. Like, it's a coin toss. Like, even if you see in the red there, 40% of people gain back more weight than they had originally lost after they started a diet. This is a 3-year huge study. Like, this isn't just, a tiny group of people, and it's over and over again. Like, they started these studies in '96 and they're still doing them, and they're still not working, right? So back to this, doctors prescribe diet and exercise based on the body mass index, but diets don't really work. And then I found out that 1 in every 4 people, that's 25%, like that's a quarter of a pie. I love pie. That's a quarter of a pie who started diet will develop an eating disorder. Like that number astounded me. And I don't know if it's landing for you all, but 1 of every 4 people that start a diet develop an eating disorder or disordered eating patterns. Doctors prescribing diets don't work, and they lead to eating disorders. And eating disorders have the highest mortality rate of any psychiatric illness. 12 times higher, in fact, than folks without eating disorders. So I don't know, I feel like I used to have this vision of eating disorders, and it was like a thin, white, female disease, and there's an affluence to it, but really when you dig into it, lots of people of all body sizes can exhibit those behaviors, and those behaviors, disordered eating behaviors, lead to death. They lead to death, like the highest rate of death for any psychiatric illness. And eating disorders, they're not just psychological, they have physical, like people go into organ failure, right? Like cardiovascular disease. So this is just blowing my mind at this point, right? And I don't know if you're following along here, but I'm like, oh my God, people are dying. People are dying based on an actual prescription from a doctor. And finally, I'm sorry for the cusses, Ross. I did a cuss, but the BMI is BS. So that's the final piece of the puzzle in my research that I came to, was that, oh my God, all of this, and the BMI actually isn't being utilized for what it's designed for. and doesn't work. And they did a really big study on this. Let me show you. I'm having trouble. Okay, there we go. So Dr. Tomiyama did a huge study on the BMI in 2016. And basically, she found that, again, it's another coin toss as to whether it shows whether the BMI actually indicates any sort of health. And it's literally a coin toss. Like, you may as well like close your eyeballs when somebody walks into an office and be like, you're healthy or not, versus doing all these calculations and putting them on a chart, right? So like 30% of people that were considered obese were totally healthy based on other biomarkers. So things like blood pressure, heart rate, etc. And then on the flip side, that 30% of people considered healthy actually had concerning results in terms of cholesterol, insulin resistance, etc. And actually, Adolf Connolly, the man who originally historically came up with the body mass index, it was called the Connolly index. He's quoted as saying that this is not made for use on individuals. He was a statistician. He created numbers to do swaths of people, grand populations. You can't take numbers like that and make them small and make them work for an individual. So again, doctors are prescribing diet and exercise based on the BMI. Diets don't work. They don't. 1 in every 4 people who diet develop an eating disorder, and people with eating disorders die. They die. And the BMI isn't even a thing. It shouldn't even be a thing. And so I'm like, why are we doing this? And I'm also a little bit of a devil's advocate. So I was like, okay, there's got to be a reason. And I did find that, the medical establishment, it's a stressed system. And this is a quick and easy way to help people with health. And, I can really, really see how that is an attractive thing to a big system that's stressed. And okay, let's do this calculation. We're going to know everything about them. I mean, it's utopic. It's a beautiful thing if it were real, right? But then getting into the darker side of it, it's really about money. It's really about money. So the inspiration for the study I just talked to you about, with the 30% of people with, the obese aren't even unhealthy, et cetera. Insurance companies wanted her to study the BMI to assess risk and charge higher premiums to those falling in unhealthy categories. That's what that's saying. Insurance companies cared about this. And if you go back historically on the BMI, it came about in World War II, after World War II, because insurance companies wanted to save money on people who were having heart attacks after the war. So this is about money, and it's always been about money for insurance companies. And it's not hard to pontificate on things that are about money, disproportionately affect the poor, disproportionately affect people of color, disproportionately affect queer folk. And there's something really that doesn't sit right with me about the BMI coming onto the scene by wealthy white men and then oppressing people in different bodies that are different. Here's my slide about that. Capitalism, white supremacy, fat phobia, we're all holding hands, right? So, thank you, Nick. I guess I just have 1 more minute here. So I want to say, so studies are showing stress around eating is as bad for cardiovascular health as eating poorly, and stress around weight stigma is as bad for cardiovascular health as eating poorly, right? So we're kind of creating cardiovascular issues through something that we're trying to solve cardiovascular issues with. And finally, I really want to offer some resources, alternatives to dieting. Intuitive eating is a really beautiful, they call it the anti-diet. It's really about tuning into your body's needs, giving yourself unconditional permission to eat. It was an incredible part of my own recovery. And Health at Every Size movement. These are body positive activists, people who came before me, beautiful people doing really, really good work. And they were an endless resource for my research here. So I'd love for you all to check that out if this is something that interests you. And other than that, I think I'll open it up for questions and things. Am I doing this right?
You're doing great, Claire.
I'm doing great. Okay, I need positive reinforcement.
Any questions?
Thank you, Zahara.
I have a question, Claire. And to start off first, wow, like just the way that you incorporated the statistical component of all this made the passion that is so clear for you very compelling. And I really want to acknowledge you for that. You did a great job putting it together. A question that comes up for me, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, and it's more explicit in your paper, but I'm curious if you could speak to the value of a contemplative approach and how that applies to some of the components you're speaking to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I touched on it a little bit like earlier with embodiment. I think like, especially when we're discussing embodiment, we're asking folks to get inside and feel what's in the body, but when we take our bodies places, they're unsafe. And what is that juxtaposition there? And then also intuitive eating was the contemplative aspect too, that I really explored because it is so tricky. I mean, even from personal experience, it's so tricky to go from eating a salad because I have to and I'm punishing myself to eating a salad because I've touched it and it sounds good. It's what sounds good. And discerning that, learning to discern that when there's a culture, a surrounding culture that is oppressive based on body size, based on skin color, based on, sexual orientation, all this stuff, like all of this noise, being able to touch into just, do I want a salad? Like, what is that? And I'm so intensely curious about it. Yeah. Thank you for that question, Ross. Intuitive eating is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? We've got time for one or two.
I have a question. And first, I just wanted to say thank you for being so thorough and awesome with this presentation. Is there a type of diet that you're seeing doctors prescribe more specifically, or is there like a regimen that they're prescribing? And if so, is that leading to like a specific type of eating disorder more often? Because I know that some can be slightly more harmful on the body or stressful on the body than others.
I didn't come across anything like that. That's super interesting and really specific. I can only speak from my personal experience, and I think I suffer from IBS, so I also ride this line of like dieting. I mean that in a way, like eating in a way that keeps my gut healthy and happy as much as possible, and also not getting into strict food rules. But I see most often it's just like eat fruits and veggies and, something a little more mild. But I think that's a really great question and something to explore. And that link that you made, that like little correlation that you touched on there between like specific disordered eating and right, and the diet fad of whatever's going on, right? What is that? that's a great curiosity that I'm not sure about.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I just have a comment, and this is something that I've wrestled with for a long time because I have, well, I should say, in my past, I had an insurance agency that basically specialized in employee benefit programs. And I constantly wrestled, like literally I lost accounts over this situation where employers were trying to institute shame-inducing policies that would force their employees to do, to disclose, maybe under the laws of HIPAA, but still be reported if they weren't meeting certain health criteria in order to qualify for certain benefits. And I just, it's one of my passions. I feel like obviously, I don't think the issue is going to go away until we abolish the insurance industry altogether, because it is a for-profit industry and it controls health in America. So anyways, I just really love your presentation. It really touched me. And I hope that someday, people like you are going to go speak to legislators and really talk about the changes that need to happen, because this is a huge health crisis, is the pressure that we put on people in these situations. So thank you for your research and for sharing that.
Wow, thank you, Zahara. Yeah, the pressure we put on people in their beautiful bodies, it really, and even myself, all the dismantle, this is really coming from a place I had to dismantle my own bias. I was a jerk. I was a jerk to myself and other people, and people's bodies are beautiful and wonderful. And yeah, insurance. Thank you.
Thank you
Hi,
so much, Claire. Oh, let's take one more.
I just wanted to know if you had come across any research regarding bodily changes as you age, and any, I don't know, just any research about that and health.
Oh my gosh. No, but that's a really interesting thing. And I would be curious about, the psychology of that, the psychology of aging and cultural expectation around, looks, how that looks and how we do it. And especially in this age of cosmetic surgery and Botox and and like, you also bring up a really interesting question about change, the body changing. We don't like that. We don't like that unless it's going in the opposite direction of the way it naturally goes. Really fascinating question. I'm sorry I don't have more to offer, but I do appreciate that curiosity.
Excellent job, Claire. Thanks for sharing with all of us.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for the
everybody.
passion that you brought to it.